What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW Videos. In today's episode, we're going to be taking a look at some Generation 8 Pokemon that are going to be released later on this week once the Ultra Bonus Unlock Part 3 ends up taking place in Pokemon Go. Now, as far as these Pokemon are concerned, we're going to be performing a pre-dive on it, and if you're not familiar with the pre-dive versus the deep dive, pre-dive, we don't have any types of movesets finalized, so we just get a little bit more familiar with the Pokemon. We take a look at the stats, their rankings compared to their typings, and then we take a look at their overall moveset and speculate how good they could be used, and of course what they could end up being used for. And then once everything gets finalized, that's when we end up doing the deep dive series. And I think that these Pokemon, we're taking a look at a sheep, a squirrel, and then a bug. That's not a bug type, but of course we will end up talking about that. But anyways, I hope you do enjoy today's episode. If you do, make sure to turn that like button shiny, and of course subscribe if you want to stay up to date on all Pokemon Go content. But anyways, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Let's go ahead and jump into the first Pokemon on this list. We've got Greedent, ladies and gentlemen, so let's go ahead and take a look. Greedent could actually end up being a pretty decent gym defender. We don't cover a lot of gym defenders in the series, so it is nice to kind of see that. So let's go ahead and take a look at this little plump squirrel here and see what's going on. So first things first, check out that stamina stat. It ends up being ranked at 21st overall in Pokemon Go, which is just crazy, with a stamina stat of 260. Very impressive. It is a thick boy getting ready for the winter for sure. And then we take a look at the max AP, a little bit underwhelming that it gets up to 2,700. So if, for example, if some reason it ended up getting a moveset that of course made sense on the gym defense side, but then maybe on the PvP side as well, it will require XL candy. So you're definitely going to want to grind it in that case if the Pokemon ends up being good. But of course, we'll find out a little bit later once the moveset ends up getting finalized, and you can kind of decide what you want to do with this Pokemon. But initially, it looks like it could end up being a decent gym defender. And then if we go ahead and compare it to normal type Pokemon, out of 111, it ends up being ranked as the 20th best overall normal type as far as the stats are concerned. And it is that stamina stat leading the pack. But that means that there's 6 other normal types that end up having a higher stamina stat, which is pretty crazy if you think about it that way. The attack stat is its lowest, but for a gym defender, I mean, I think that's going to be good enough, but we will take a look at the move pool and kind of speculate on that moving forward. Now, this next Pokemon is Falinks. Now, when I took a look at Falinks, and if you were to ask me what typing it was, I probably would have guessed a bug typing and then maybe something else like poison or something, but I was completely wrong. It's actually a pure fighting type Pokemon, so this will be kind of interesting. Because when I was covering the Ultra Bonus Unlock Part 3, I mentioned that Falinks would be one of the Pokemon that's being featured in the wild, and there was a surprising number of people that were saying that in the Sword and Shield, they really enjoyed using Falinks, and that Falinks was very good in the game, and that they're really hopeful that it ends up getting its potential and it ends up being useful in Pokemon Go. So that gets me a little bit hyped for this Pokemon, and we're going to go ahead and talk about it. So as far as general stats are concerned, from a raid side, I don't know if it's going to end up working out because that attack stat is so low compared to other fighters, especially with the fighting types in Pokemon Go. I mean, it would be very hard to compete. The defense stat is technically its best rank, but it's still on the lower end. And then finally, the stamina is low. So it's acting a lot like a glass cannon, so I don't foresee any value out of the raid side of things, but for PvP, it could end up being pretty interesting. So we've got a max CP of 2,696, so very similar to Greedent, right around that 2,700 range. So it would require XL candies to get it up into the Ultra League, but this Pokemon could end up having some potential from the Ultra League. It's really going to depend on that moveset, what Niantic ends up giving it. And we'll have a little bit of a discussion once we head over to the moves. But something interesting going on with these Pokemon being Generation 8, they have a lot of moves that are not introduced yet into Pokemon Go. So I'm curious what will happen. If I were to predict it, I would say that Niantic is not going to create new moves specifically for these Pokemon or using these Pokemon as the catalyst to go ahead and introduce them. So I think they're going to get moves that are just already in Pokemon Go and not add one. But of course, that is speculation, and that's all what this episode or this series is about. So if we take a look at this, we can see that versus the fighting type Pokemon, it ends up being ranked at 35th. So a little bit towards the back half of the middle. And then if we take a look at it, it ends up being its defense stat that ranks the highest, followed by its attack stat. And then finally, we've got the stamina stat in there. So it'll be interesting to see Falinks. And of course, I think the moveset, once again, is going to be the most interesting thing to talk about out of both of these Pokemon that we've seen so far. And then finally, we have Dubwool. So Dubwool is going to be a pure normal type Pokemon, just like Greedent that we saw first. And as far as its stats are concerned, the defense stat ends up being its dominant stat, ranked at 142nd. So it has a defense stat that's near 200, which is actually pretty good. Its stamina stat is a little bit on the lower end, but not too terrible. And then its attack stat is super bad. But this could end up playing in favor for it from the PvP side once again. So PvP, I know you're real excited about this one when you take a look at some of these Pokemon. We've got the level 51 CP here, so it is going to require getting up to level 50, level 49.5, something like that for this Pokemon. So all of these Pokemon seem to be very expensive options from the PvP side, so the moveset is going to be extremely important. I feel like we've got a theme going on with this episode here, but a lot of these Pokemon could be a heavy investment, and you want to make sure that it ends up being the right one for you. So going up against those normal type Pokemon, it ends up being ranked at 32nd overall as far as the stats are concerned. So a little bit behind Greedent, which was what, at 20 a little bit earlier. So we do have a good defense stat going on here, but the attack and stamina end up kind of being middle of the pack in this situation. So it is interesting so far. I mean, I'm not seeing like any huge red flags or anything like that. So I think what we need to do now is actually take a look at the moveset. And what I've done is I've actually highlighted all of the moves that could end up being interesting for this Pokemon. So the first one we're going to take a look at is Greedent. So Greedent can learn the move Bite, which I think would be kind of cool to have maybe from the PvP side. We do have access to Body Slam. So ideally, when you have a gym defender that is a normal type Pokemon, because it's only weak to fighting type moves, you would like to have some type of coverage versus a fighting type Pokemon. But in this particular case, it doesn't have it. But what it does have is a move that can spam out a lot more so, such as Body Slam. So I'm getting a lot of parallels, for example, to a Pokemon like Snorlax as far as the moveset is concerned. We have access to the move Counter. Bullet Seed. Bullet Seed would be super interesting as a grass type move to see how that would end up working. And then a couple other moves that would be interesting. For example, we've got Mud Shot for PvP. That would be kind of cool. And then we do have access to Superpower, which would also be interesting for PvP. And then finally, we have Seed Bomb. So I don't know. I mean, when I take a look at this Pokemon, I do see at least some potential in that moveset that could end up making it at least interesting on the PvP side. And then from the gym side, it's really its stats as a gym defender that make it the most relevant. And then of course the moveset would just add on to it. But I think Body Slam is a good substitute. And I'm going to go ahead and make a prediction. I think that Body Slam is something that Greedent is going to get. I'm calling it now. So let's go ahead and move on to Dubwool. We'll go ahead and walk through this Pokemon, similar fashion. We, interestingly enough for Dubwool, do have access to Last Resort, but I doubt it's going to end up getting access to it actually in the game. And then if we go ahead and scroll down, we can see that Dubwool is going to have access to Counter, which could be kind of a cool thing. And then we also have the move Body Slam, which would be a ton of fun as well. So this could end up being helpful from the gym defense side as well as the PvP side. And then scrolling down a little bit more, we can see that we've got access to a move like Zen Headbutt, which would be great to have as a quick move to be able to defend against those fighters, especially in a gym situation, or maybe even in PvP to have a little bit of coverage on that. But Dubwool doesn't really have a lot of moves, so I think it's pretty easy to predict. What I could see is probably just a Counter, Zen Headbutt, and a Body Slam. But what else? I don't know. I honestly don't know what'll end up happening with this Pokemon, but there's really not a lot of options here, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. So finally we have Falinks. So Falinks is gonna be a fun one to kind of take a look at, more so from the PvP side as opposed to gym defense. It does have access to the move Counter, which is great as a fighting type Pokemon. And then if we go ahead and check it out, we can see that it has Rock Slide. So it's looking kind of like Machamp could end up having a little bit of competition here. And then if we go ahead and scroll down, we can see that I did put a little bit of a question mark here because it has access to Payback, but I just don't know how viable Payback is. It could end up being used as some coverage versus a Fairy type Pokemon, for example, but because it takes so long to charge, I don't know if Payback would necessarily be the greatest move. And then if we go ahead and check out some other moves, we can see that Superpower Falinks does have access to it. And it also has access to Focus Blast and Close Combat. So I'm just hoping that it doesn't end up getting either of those moves and instead get Superpower, because then it means it would at least have a chance from the PvP side with Superpower, with Counter, with Rock Slide. I mean, that could actually be a decent moveset, but of course, we've covered all of these Pokemon in the pre-dive series. I would love to know what you think about these Pokemon, and definitely let me know if you think any of them have potential. Could you see any of them having any use in Pokemon Go? Probably not from the raid side, but potentially gym defense, potentially from PvP. Which of these 3 Pokemon are you most excited about? Definitely let me know in the comments section below. But before we end this episode, I want to say thank you so much to the supporters over at Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the channel and want to connect with a really fun community, we've been upgrading our exclusive Discord server and having a lot of fun with that. You definitely need to check out the Patreon link in the description below, and I will see you next time.